A lot of us visionaries and entrepreneurs, it's like the definition of who I am is my business. I'm Coach Bob. I'm a visionary coach. Well, okay, that's an aspect of who I am and kind of what I do that really isn't who I am. So it's not, what should you do when you step into the visionary seat? It's who are you and be that.
Welcome to Confessions of an Implementer. I'm your host, Ryan Hogan. We share unique stories of EOS implementers and the companies they've transformed to give you a rare glimpse into the successes and challenges of the system in action. Let's jump in. All right. Well, Coach Bob, thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited about this one based upon our, I would say green room, but we only spent 2 minutes in the green room. But our last 30-minute conversation, you have a very interesting story.
Thank you. I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Well, it is a compliment, and I think there's a lot of things that resonate deeply with me just by keywords. And so I'll give you one of the keywords that you used about a month ago, and you said, "I grew my company out of control." And I've done that so many times in the past. I was like, "Oh, I feel that." Let's talk about it, because it was a distribution company, a mailing company to Canada,
right?
And how did you grow it out of control?
We might have talked about this before, but I've always been able to sell, to inspire, and have fun. And so I sold the shit out of our team and what we did. We did have a bit of a differential. There weren't too many honest companies in the business and that were transparent. And I had an amazing telemarketer that I've got to give her credit. And she made me look like a star. She would get in the door. I would just show up and they're like, "Oh my God, it's such an honor to meet you." And I'm like, okay. And I would inspire them in general about life and about their business and about the industry. And they would be like, "Great, where do we sign up?" I'm like, I don't even do that. And I think the fact that I was in the visionary seat and I was so confident, I think this is true for a lot of visionaries. If I'm confident in my people and my process, that's what I'm selling. And that's what I was doing there. And so, but we did not have the systems behind us. So I was like, it's revenue. We went from 200,000 to 5 million in a couple of years. And we had mail in the back, and we had one of our furnaces caught on fire, and it was -20 that winter. And I tried to take a vacation, and the guy who came in to take over was calling me going, "What did you create here?" And I'm like, yeah, that's why I left. So out of control was that we sold and we had something to sell. We did not have the systems and process in to back up that growth.
A lot of times a visionary stays in the sales seat. And what's really funny is, like, it's for the exact reasons that you kind of said, like, sometimes it can go in not the right direction as well. Right. Do you still feel you as the visionary, like in companies, should be in the sales seat? Or did that experience teach you that like you can sell anything, but sometimes it's not what you guys have?
Well, in the 10 steps to being a great effing visionary, which is, I've got something coming up in November where we're going to be sharing that. And one of the things I used to say, create a killer team. Okay, EOS talks about that. A lot of people do. Okay, that's great. My number one for visionaries is to be in the visionary seat, hopefully only in the visionary seat. Maybe in a sales seat, but not running sales. And that's a bit of a stereotype, but a lot of us are it's founder-led sale. It's fine if I can help influence the big sales, but not that it's the company's dependent on me to sell, or especially for me to be running sales. And anyone who's running a department needs to be able to lead, manage, and drive accountability. I'm terrible at management and accountability. I can lead, but So one of my big messages to visionaries, and again, I'm in it right now. I'm in the sales leader seat for my coaching company. Now, we're a smaller company, but I can't be here, and so that's something that's taken me out of that. So, long-winded, it's most visionaries are not good at leading any group, and that I don't want to be dependent that I'm the only one driving sales. So in my example for my distribution company, this gal, Vicky, she could open doors, get people interested, and get me appointment. I didn't sell the account. I sold the relationship. So that to me was, I was in the visionary seat, not in a sales seat.
I agree with you, because it's also me.
It's most of us.
so I'm, and I tell my co-founder this all the time, Alana, I'm like, I am like, you do not like every time I'm either leading a project or
Right.
managing a project or managing a person, like things are not getting done efficiently.
Nope.
We are not as productive as we could be. Why do you think that is for visionaries?
I think it's our makeup, weather, and again, there's different data points that help us to define who we are. So Colby's a data point. It's not who I am. I'm a 3 fact find, 2 follow through, 9 quick start. So I'm like, let's try everything. We'll beg for forgiveness, and it shouldn't be that hard. And then I walk away. Whereas the people have to do it, say, okay, dude, there's more to it than just saying we're going to do it today. And I'm not good at time. I'm like, well, we should have this done by the end of the week. And they're like, all right, this is going to take 3 months. I think it's the makeup. I think a lot of us visionaries are, and I do want to do a study on this. What is the average Colby score, for visionaries? What is the average working genius? And I don't know what working genius would be, but a lot of us are, wired differently. We have that intensity. We're visionaries, and most visionaries are not great. And as Gino talks about, Gino Wickman from EOS, that like about 5% of visionaries are integrators. And if I don't know if when Gino first was, like EOS, he proved that it worked, and then he wanted to find an integrator. I'm like, I'll be your integrator. This is 25 years ago, and he's like, dude, you would be an awesome integrator for about 15 minutes. And it's so true. But I didn't know who I was at that point. But so I just think that most of us are not good at managing and accountability. I don't know why. I just think it's the makeup of a visionary isn't usually good at those things. And then one other quick story, my last job that I had where I worked for someone, I was a top salesperson. What they do, they made me sales manager of the region, moved me to Chicago. I hated my life. I mean, on Sunday nights, I couldn't sleep because not only was I not a good manager, but they didn't run on a business operating system. So they would change the rules halfway through, and it was horrible.
That's so interesting. Like, cause you hear this very often, of this idea of like, my best salesperson, like it's natural. I'm going to put them into the sales seat.
Right.
And it sounds like that doesn't work out quite as often as people would like.
And I've worked with, I should count this up, but I mean, 500 visionaries over the years. And I'd say 2, 3, or 4 of them are good LMA, or especially manage and driving accountability. It's not many. So again, I don't mean to say because you're a visionary, you can't. I just find most often it's not. And that's, I think, a misperception is, well, if I'm only in the visionary seat, well, and I did this. I was going through a divorce. This is, again, 28 years ago or whatever. And I'm like, I got to figure stuff out. So I went to my leadership team and I'm like, I've got to leave. So I took a 2-month sabbatical. And one of the greatest moments of my life, Ryan, is they were like, dude, we got you. And I'm like, really? Yeah. And they were sound enough that they could. And I checked in once in a while. And then I came back a couple months later. I'm like, I'm back. And they're like, we're really glad you're back. And by the way, we don't want you doing almost anything you used to do. And I'm like, well, then what do I do? And that was kind of the beginning of, I didn't know what to do next as I was letting go of the vine. And what I realized, a lot of people, especially visionaries, have a hard time letting go of the vine if they don't know what life beyond the vine is. So I'm like, what do I do now? And they're like, well, what you're great at in love. And I'm like, I didn't even know what that was. And again, this is almost 30 years ago. And I'm like, well, I'm good at drinking with my clients. And they're like, well, go do that. And I did, and it kind of worked. I had to cut back a little bit, but
it's so interesting because the other thing, or at least the issue that I have, is like, I always have to be busy. I always have to be moving forward, like go, go, go. And there's very little patience. Like when you get to a place of where you can let go of the vine, there's more time on your hands. And like, what is because you coach hundreds of visionaries, like when they start to find this new time, like is your suggestion like, hey, don't fill it up just yet, like let's kind of, all right, let's go into it.
We wrote this book. So Gino, again, great friend, I have such admiration. He changed my life in so many ways. His system did so much that I implemented for 10 years. One of the things that he taught me is I and many visionaries avoid structure. And what Gino taught me is to put structure around who matters most and what matters most actually opens up more freedom for create. Because I'm like, I just want to be spontaneous and I just want to respond to Ryan and we'll wing it. And there's intuition and magic. And it's like, okay, if I focus on and put some structure around who and what matters most, there is actually more time for that. And so again, to your question, there is more time, and there's guilt because I'm like, wait, well, I'm really good at being on podcasts. I'm really good at coaching, but that's too easy. And I think the chatter in my head was, no, you need to work harder.
Yeah.
So, but what I realized is to life beyond the vine is a lot of us visionaries and entrepreneurs. It's like the definition of who I am is my business. I'm Coach Bob. I'm a visionary coach. Well, okay, that's an aspect of who I am and kind of what I do. That really isn't who I am. So it's not, what should you do when you step into the visionary seat? It's who are you and be that. Often, again, I was the wacky Bob out there having fun and got more business with the help of my salesperson. But then I got into the structure and process, and they're just like, dude, be free, be happy, be you. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. So to me, to schedule time to realize what matters most, clarify who I am, and to follow my North Star. So business operating systems, help us to describe, what do you do? Why do you do it? And how do you do it? Okay, cool. Why wouldn't I do that for my life? So again, I put structure because I never thought I would do a business structure, let alone a life structure. So my wife and I wrote this book, Unscatter the Chatter, for me. And it resonates with a lot of people, especially visionaries, because there's a lot of chatter coming at us from the outside. Most of it is not positive. There's even more chatter up here. Most of it's not positive. And I think visionaries have more than that, and maybe not. But as Dr. Doug Brackman talks about in Driven, is 8% of us are wired biologically different. And I think that's most of us visionaries. And a lot of us have a little bit of an issue of, like, who are we, and imposter syndrome. And when he first told me that, I'm like, well, I don't have that problem. Well, at the end of the day, I'm still trying to prove myself a lot of times. So that's that chatter to say, I hope I impressed Ryan, and are people going to hire me for this? And, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And it's like, wow, lighten up. So we created this book to help. It was basically what, Gino was obsessed with helping entrepreneurs get everything they want out of their business. And he did it brilliantly, and it's helped hundreds of thousands of people, especially visionaries. And I'm obsessed with helping visionaries to get everything they want out of their lives. And so, yeah, when people come to me to say, hey, help me be a better visionary and improve, yeah, I go through the basics of, the roles and responsibility. And EOS does a great job at that. My thing is, who are you? Why are you here? And what is it that you're great at and love? And be a thought leader. And again, that's a whole shift for people to say, well, and a lot of us forget about life beyond the vine is our hobbies, our health, our relationships. A lot of visionaries are like this, and all of a sudden their kids have grown up and maybe they have a heart attack, and don't wait for the heart attack. So this is kind of what EOS is for business. Unscatter the Chatter is for life. So it's just, and again, spending time on, with the most important person in the world, which is me. I mean, that may sound selfish, but if I'm more worried about you, and even with my wife, who I adore, we've been together for 25 years this year. If I'm not sound up here, and maybe even something greater, I'm not as great as a husband. And so again, even to realize that she matters most. For many years, it was 95% of what mattered most was my business. And she called me out on it, to be honest, when we were struggling, when the recession hit in 08 or 09. I was still going to the office 50 hours a week. She's like, we're dead in the water. Why do you keep going? I'm like, well, I got to do something. And she's like, wouldn't you now want to spend more time? You have time to spend with me and the kids. They were young. And I said, well, I love you guys. And she's like, I know you do, but you also vote with your feet. I'm like, oh. And so I started to spend more time because, of course, they mattered most, but I wasn't acting like it. And so, and then that gave me more fulfillment. And so instead of looking outside for joy and fulfillment with business success or money or things or whatever, it's starting to look for what is inside success and peace and freedom and joy. And that is playing catch with my son and holding hands with my daughter as we go to a Tiger game and going out with my wife and sitting in front of the fire and dreaming and celebrating what a great life we have, and it's the internal, that way that I'm not worried about the chatter out there or even up here. So if that makes sense.
There's so much to unpack there. I love this. Some of the common theme throughout all of that with the inside success is really about like discovering, kind of like self-discovery through this, and thinking about discovery like beyond some sort of revenue number or some sort of like bank account number. Is this like when you take that it sounds amazing as a strategy. Now, like backing into like the tactics of that, is this when you went and found yourself, like, did you do one of those things where you go to another country and just, meditate for a week, or how did you stumble on
I've
this?
worked with different healers and different things which have helped, and almost all the psychologists that I went to, I would end up helping them, and which was kind of interesting. But a lot of that was avoidance for being helped. I'm pretty good at deflecting. So some of it was outside, but to be honest, my wife was huge with that because she helped me when we first met, and we worked together actually. And she was, I'm sure attracted to me being a leader. But then she was like, "You're so worried about the doing things. What about the being side?" So she and I went on a lot of self-discovery things. So it wasn't just, fix Bob. It was, what is spirit? What is life? What is connection? What does it even mean to be down here? I'm so up here, and with that chatter. So really, we created a program from many, like what Gino did. He looked at all these different things and summarized it and created this amazing system. We did this. Gino and I went on a lot of the same, with Strategic Coach together, EO together. I was his first client. He was one of my first clients. And so we went out to learn, and he morphed it toward business, and I morphed a lot of it toward personal. And so it was interesting. So Cheryl and I came up with things. And again, for me to be so driven toward structure is weird, but simple structure at business proved it worked. And then so what we have, we've got basically 9 steps to, we elevate your mind and expand your impact. And so it's 7 lifetime expanders that I wanted to write a book to help me and show my kids what I not only have learned, but I'm still learning. And so I kind of wrote it for them, kind of like the gentleman who did the
last lecture, Randy Pausch.
Yes, exactly. So he did it when he had X amount of time to live, and he had a seminar or whatever he called lecture, the last lecture, thank you. And it was really for his kids. And then when my dad passed 12 years ago, I asked my mom if I could speak, and she's like, "Of course," at the funeral. And I was like, "Oh, okay, what am I going to talk about?" And even in the first line in the book is, when my dad died, I was mad at him because he didn't teach me the meaning of life. And what is God and what is love and whatnot. And so when I did the 10 steps, the 10 lessons I learned from my dad, I learned he didn't tell me about the meaning of life. He showed me what meaning of life was for him. And it was, every time there's a sunset, no matter where we were, we'd pull off the side of the road and we would just stop and watch the sunset. And it was being outside, and it was great vacations and having happy hour, which may sound kind of weird. Maybe that's another issue. But it was basically at the end of the day, we would sit down, and before I would have a drink, we would just, well, what worked today? Hey, how is everyone? And we would check in almost every night. And I'm like, that's spirit and that's love is what, and he was from a different generation. Like, I started to hug him when I was 20. He's like, "Oh, we're doing this now, eh?" And I'm like, "I want to give you a hug, dude." And he was from that age of World War II, and guys didn't cry or feel. And so there's just a lot of things. So anyways, to get down to the tactics, there's literally there's 9 tools in here. So it's principles, practices, and tools, what works for me. And some people are like, "Wow, you're so regimented," but I'm actually a little bit processed, but then I have a lot more freedom within that. But this helps me each day to remind me what matters most to me, why I'm here, and what I do. And I share that with my team. I share that so they can help me. It's like, "Hey, let's go create, make coffee mugs." And people are like, "Okay, that's kind of cool. How does that tie into your why, what, and how?" And I'm like, "Okay, that's silly." But I've got a team that helps to protect me from myself.
Real quick side note on the last lecture by Randy Pausch. That book was like a life changer for me. The only reason I knew it off the top of my head is because like it changed my life 18 years ago. And,
awesome.
And it was a big reason how I got a commissioning in the Navy, because I was probably not on the right track. And so the whole line of like brick walls are there to keep people that don't want it bad enough out. Like
Right. That's awesome.
that was like my war cry for about 3 years.
Right.
When you think that there's so many interesting things about this, and I think one interesting topic that I'd love to explore is like, what does your daily routine look like? Because like, that's going to help at least me as a visionary. But the first thing is like, what's the first step? So there's like tools and there's steps, and like, generally speaking, it's all about that first step. Yep. So like, what is that first step that's like critically important?
It's to make time for yourself. And so whether that's, and for some people it might be yoga, it may be reading the Bible, it may be whatever, but make time for yourself. And it's okay to even be in quiet or stillness. So it's not making time to do something. Gino calls it a clarity break. That's one of the ways to do it. So to me, it's to make time to tap into myself. So it's like the oxygen mask. So if I wake up and I look at my emails and I'm looking online, I go into a spiral. So that taps into my routine is most days I jump in the jacuzzi in the morning. I'm not looking at my phone. I do a box breathing exercise of 5 minutes where it's just something that helps me to breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, and let go. And it helps me to have an app to tell me when to do it. And then I'm like, oh, I did it, 5 minutes, woohoo. And almost every day, Ryan, I'm like, oh, I don't have time for this. And it's like, okay, 60% of my days are great no matter what I do in the morning. 90% of my days are amazing when I spend 10 minutes on my own. And it's just making time. So whether it's journaling or whatever, for me, again, it's box breathing for 5 minutes. I've got a couple guided meditations that one of the healers I work with did for me. It's like an 8-minute meditation where she just kind of guides me to a place. And then I'm just there, and stuff that comes through me, just ideas or thoughts. And it's usually around gratitude and love and ideas to say, you know what, I gotta send an audio to Ryan to thank him for that, or whatever, or I'm going to connect Ryan to so and so. And those things come to me when I'm elevated and not in the urgent side. I'm more on the important side. So on my business, on my life. So I do box breathing for 5 minutes. My 331 is my daily routine. And then I write it down. Then I do pick up my phone, but it's on airplane mode. And I list out the 3 things that matter most to me today, the top 3 impactful action items that if I do or be these 3 things today, it's a great day. And then the one, if it were up to me, which is an I am statement or 2. A lot of what we talk about is the chatter in our heads is, am I ever going to make it? Is Ryan going to join this? It's just like constantly. And at the end of the day, it's switching it to I am. So am I a great father? I realized years ago, I am a great father. And so if that's the voice in my head, I catch myself if I'm not being a great father. Or it's shifting that conversation. So the 3 I am statements are calling that forth each day. So that's my morning ritual. And then literally I share my 331, which is one of the tools in the book. I share it with about 20 people. And I forget who said it. I don't know if it was Les Brown or whoever said, any worthy goal written down and shared is bound to happen. So I share my 331 with people. I've got about 20 people that share it with me. So it's kind of accountability partners, but I'm not holding you accountable. But I'm reading yours going, oh, that's a kick-ass day. I don't have my wife on is what matters most. Of course, and so what is an action item I can do to help her to know and feel that? And what happens is I do this usually at around 6 a.m. And then either I go to the office or I work from home and I knock out my 3 things right away. And I'm like, I already had a great day. And so I can either go do more or I'm going to go hang out with my wife for the day and go for a walk with my dog or whatever. But if I get the most important things done or I'm being those, and it often is personal. It's like, is it urgent that I call my mom today? Maybe not, but it's important. So it might be what matters most is being a great son. And then what my top impactful action item is to call my mom or to send a love note to her or an audio. So, and then that makes me feel good. So that's my morning routine. And then as I do that, and then my weekly routine is I do a Take 5 check-in, which is one of our tools. And this takes about 30 minutes. And I go to the whiteboard. And it's basically asking myself questions. So it's a safe space for me to hear myself think. I ask myself the questions, the why behind the question, and the next step. And so the chatter is going, oh, and then I write it on the board, and then the why and the next step. And what comes out of that are some themes, some things for me to delegate, some things just to shift my mindset. It's like, am I going to run out of money? And it's like, and then after I think about it, it's like, if everything in the world goes wrong in the next 6 months, I might run out of money. Okay, well, that isn't a concern for today. But then I shift the conversation to, I'm successful, I'm wealthy, whatever it might be. So that's the chatter in my head. So that's what I do once a month. And then I do an audio of that to my team, which are some of my clients and my leadership team. So they hear what's going on in my head and my heart. Very cathartic.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love the the not turning your phone on. I did it's called The Artist Way. Have you ever heard of The
No,
Artist Way?
I've heard of it, but I don't know
It's
what
a
it is.
Okay. It's a book, and it's like a 12-week program, and it just kind of like frameworks each week and what you should do.
Right.
And it was Rodney Muller, who's an EOS implementer out of St. Louis, that put together. So we all did it. It was like a men's group, and we did 12 weeks of this. And there was like 3 big changes that I made. The first was I didn't check my cell phone until the workday actually started. So that was 9 a.m.
Yeah.
But the day actually started at like 5:30, and it was 3 pages of just unconscious writing.
Yeah.
So you just let the pen move, and whatever it writes, it writes. And it just took so much pressure. Like, I've written blog posts and other things, and you sit there and I'm like trying to think through it. This was amazing. It just cleared all the head trash in the morning. It just flew. Yeah. And then it was gym, then it was back, then it was get the kids ready, then it was get them out the door. And then and only then did I turn my cell phone on. And it had this like complete change on my life. Now, I will tell you, I am no longer disciplined to that routine, and I need to get back to it. But I've seen kind of the light that you're talking about when you do these things in the morning.
And part of it is, okay, I'll take care of myself later. I got to take care of the kids. I got to take care of, but when is later? And so when I know and act like I matter, literally my brain and my heart is like, oh, Bob's paying attention to me, because I matter. And so a lot of, especially us visionaries, I don't think know we matter a lot, deep down. I mean, we make a big difference at work and whatnot, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of guilt around it. We don't fit into the mold with a lot of people. I wasn't necessarily good at school. I hated it. So we don't fit into that mold. So at the end of the day, I matter, not how many hours I work or what I do. It's who I am and how I show up. And so again, and it used to be like, well, I don't have time to do my 3-3-1 or my take 5 when I had the kids in the morning. And then I would just be running around with my head cut off. And I'm like, all right, get up a half hour earlier. I matter that much. So your first step is to make time to know and act like I matter.
Quick question, side note. Has anybody ever told you growing up that like, that's Bob talk or that's Bob speak?
There goes Bob.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, where did squirrel come in Gino's book? It was one of my employees going, Bob's cool to work for, but sometimes he chases squirrels,
That's
for sure.
That's hilarious.
No, and I took that as I wasn't like my brother, who is very book smart, really good at school, an engineer. And I'm like, I can't even, open up to the right page. But I'm brilliant in different ways, and we've come to know and love each other. We've joked that he and I are like the perfect human. He is the intellectual and things like that, and very focused and disciplined, and I'm a bit all over the place and learning more discipline. But it's different. Yes, I definitely was called that or heard that.
Yeah, that's like I heard my former co-founder, still best friend, and grew up with him, and like we co-founded my last company, Hunt a Killer, and then the company before that, Run for Your Lives. And I'd walk around the office and just like say things, and then like he would be walking behind me, be like, "That's just Hogan speak. Hey, that's just Hogan talk." And he would be like the interpreter for whatever it is that just came out of my mouth. So you talked about the 3-3-1, just very, very clearly, very succinctly, like what is the 3, what is the 3, and what is the 1?
The 3 things that matter most to me today. And some people are like, why would that change? Well, today it's rest and relaxation or whatever. And tomorrow might be revenue. And the next day might be family. So it's the 3 things that matter most to me today. My top 3 impactful action items. So the important things, not necessarily the urgent, it's like, oh, I got to fix Ryan's invoice. It's like, okay, I'm going to get to that. But the important things. And so often it's a love note, gratitude, something for myself, maybe a project that I've been waiting, putting off. And so I feel really good when I knock it out. So that's the second 3. And then the 1 is if it were up to me. And usually those are I am statements. So when people start, if it were up to me, people wouldn't suck. I'm like, okay, well, I get it. But if it were up to me, I'm seeing the value in everyone I meet. And I'm kind of like, well, Ryan's kind of an ass, and it's like, no, I'm seeing the value. And when I'm putting that out there, that's what I get. Because what we put out to the universe, we get. So if I'm putting out negativity and victim mode, that's what I'm going to get back. If I'm putting out gratitude and love and support, it's amazing. So I find that, often I don't want to write a positive I am statement, but it's like, it's a bit fake it till you make it. To me, verbiage reflects consciousness. So if in my head is, am I ever going to make it? And I'm always behind and I never get to, I'm brilliant, man. And I need to plan a little better, and so it's a combination. And so that's the one, the 331. It's funny because but it's the I am statements that, that when that is the statement in my head is I'm making a huge impact. I have it. And so who am I speaking to? It's not me telling you I'm amazing. Who am I speaking to?
Yep.
So that's the 331. And then again, I've got now in the Visionary Forum, our community of visionaries, that is, we put people on 331 teams of 3 or 4 people, and they share it with each other. And I've had people go, well, it's nice that you hold me accountable. I'm like, I don't hold anyone accountable. But because I usually do it early, then people are like, oh, I could do mine. So it's funny because sometimes I'll get up and I'll go into the hot tub and it's like, damn, someone's trying to send me a thing. I haven't even done it yet.
I love that. All right, quick break, friends. Do you find it impossible to hire and retain top sales talent? Or worse, are you paying insane recruiter fees who are all using outdated hiring processes? Yeah, I was too. At Hunt to Killer, we were spending hundreds of thousands on recruiter agency fees. And after I sold that company in 2025, I started Talent Harbor. And the whole vision here was to make sales recruiting accessible to small and medium-sized businesses, because the organizations that can hire and retain world-class people are the ones that ultimately win. Most organizations rely on things like ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn, and they get hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes. But we find that the best salespeople are already perfectly placed somewhere else. And that's why our approach is to go after them. And we do that through a business model called recruiting as a service. We do not charge commissions. We do not have success fees. We don't have contracts. We don't have long-term engagements. And we become an extension of your team as expert sales recruiters. If you're tired of the same old recruiters and want to actually grow your sales team, check us out at talentharbor.com. That's Talent Harbor, TALENTHARBOR.com. Let's get your next sales superstar hired. You do this a lot and you coach a lot of visionaries. Like, how long do they generally have to stay in step one to get that like validating aspect where they're like, oh, okay.
That's a great question. About 30 days. That it's kind of like when I first did strategic coach 25 years ago, my whole EO forum did it together, which was awesome. And he gave us all these things to do. And, coach is, at least it was, we come together every 90 days and we showed up the first 90 days. He goes, we're going to take this time right now to forgive ourselves that we didn't get everything done, and we were all kind of like, whew, it's so to me, it's about a 90-day program. So the first 30 is just to kind of test it. And then after about 30 days, it isn't a pain and they start to see the results. So then the second 30 days is kind of refining it and defining it and looking forward to it. And then hopefully the third 90 days is making it a true habit.
Got it. It's almost like I say this out loud, and I say this to Alana a lot, which, like getting rid of email and calendaring first. And it's like, hey, anything that is below $100 an hour job, like we should not be doing. And she's like, well, then what would I do? And I'd be like, well, go for a walk with your dog, because then you're thinking about the business and like the impact that you can make through those thoughts and strategy and all your experience and wisdom is much more impactful than that 50. But I almost say that sometimes because I also have to convince myself of something very similar. So 30 days.
And again, to me, it's a 90-day commitment. So I have people do either a 90-day program when I coach them, and I call that Live Your Legacy Now 90-day coaching program, because I teach them the real basic foundation, which is the 331, the Take 5, and then what I call the rules of engagement for creating a great relationship. So those are the main things I teach. And then hopefully they go through the book, because there's other things. So we have training videos and whatnot. But 90 days is where it can take hold. And then some people hire me for the year because that's basically just helping them with their own structure. Now, are they going to stay in that structure? So it's interesting. I've had a few integrators go through the program, and it used to be a year-long program. And then I had a few integrators go through it, and after 90 days, they're like, okay, go away. I got it. And I'm like, but wait, I'm supposed to teach you for 9 more months. And they're like, I don't need to. We visionaries are often slow learners and need someone to help motivate us.
That was actually gonna be one of my next questions was about the integrator, like all of this like training and thoughts and strategies for the visionary who's just like all over the place and mostly creating chaos. Like, what's generally your advice to the integrators who've got to deal with that type of stuff?
Well, first of all, it's got to be a right fit. So there's got to be trust, a time for trust, so we can be open and honest. To give us visionary space to, and again, safe space, not in front of the whole team, but I'll call my integrator and say, what the F is going on with this? Or how come we're not doing this? Or what about, and that's fine. I'm getting it out of my head and out of my heart. And she'll be like, dude, we got it covered. Thank you very much. Or thank you for letting me know. So trusting me and giving me a safe space. And I'm very, I love being, affirmed. It's like, that's a great idea, Bob, even if it's stupid or doesn't make sense. But it's like, that's a great idea, Bob. Does it make sense to me right now? I think that maybe is next quarter but as long as it's captured, I got it out of my head because I don't remember things really well sometimes. So it's to trust, build trust, so make time for each other, to do a retreat together. I think having a coach with both of them, and it might be an EOS implementer or it might be someone like myself, that giving, I loved having them do the take fives together and the 3-3-1s together. So
that's interesting.
So then they are what's going on in my head and my heart. So there's got to be a fit, to not be offended because sometimes I'm very blunt, but it's better that I'm blunt with them. So kind of thick skin, but allow me to, like I had someone the other day, I started to kind of ramble and it was only going to be about a minute and someone cut me off and I'm just like, okay, you just ruined my train of thought, then I'm just like, I'm out. So that may be a little selfish, but it's like, let me start the conversation and I keep it to a minute to kind of share the vision. And when I share it, I might be like, okay, that was silly, but at least I got it out of my head. So it's trust, right. Make time for each other, a true same page meeting for a half a day once a month, and maybe off site if possible. And even just I used to think, well, you're my integrator, so you got to deal with all my shit, and I don't want to hear about yours. Well, it's not bad to build a relationship, and then me as a visionary to listen to the integrator. I'd be say, Ryan, what do you think? And then, okay, anyways, so let's. It's like so it goes both ways. So one of the habits that I teach is to create a safe space, and even a sacred space as the visionary, where I'm really good at pumping people up, and I can easily blow them up. And so to create a safe space, if you say, Bob, I disagree with you, I'm not like, come on, why can't you listen? It'd be like, okay, well, why? And just to let, safe space to, you can hear yourself think. So sometimes people will say something like, yeah, I know, I got it, we'll do it. And they keep talking. And I'm like, well, why do you keep talking? And they're like, well, I still haven't heard it. So for me to slow down and listen. So it's a two-way street, for the integrator and for the visionary. And then the other thing for the integrator is to have the courage to say, and with discernment, I've had different integrators that don't have discernment, and that's a big no-no. I think any integrator needs to have follow through and discernment in Colby and Working Genius. And I trust if someone says, I think that's a great idea. So sometimes it's kind of, okay, we got to pacify Bob for a second. But then I don't think it makes sense right now. I'll be like, okay, fine. As long as we have it captured and that we will look at it again in a quarter or a year or whatever, I just keep repeating myself until I know someone is capturing the thoughts, not acting on everyone, but at least I feel heard and feel seen.
It's so interesting that you say that. 90. I've been using 90.io since my last company. I think we were like some of the early adopters for the platform. It was like 2016, something like that. And there's this like weird psychological thing that happens because I always have ideas, and then started putting them. I was like, okay, well, I don't have to tell the team every single idea anymore because I've got a place to put it. Yeah. And then the long-term issues list is like my absolute favorite because like I know it's a good idea, but I know it's not a good idea until years from now. But I also know it's not captured, or it's now captured. And it's like, it's this weird psychological relief that I have with the issues list, which has been interesting.
So that, and what another implementer, I forget who, said that and maybe it was EOS taught it and I just didn't listen, is the 3-year picture is the visionary's playground. And so it's not goals. It isn't, we are going to go buy a company. It's like, it's a potential, what does it look like, taste like, smell like, feel like? So I get to play. So no one has to
Yeah.
commit to anything, but I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we had 100 people doing this? And if we had the jet, I mean, whatever, so it's got to be somewhat realistic, but to use issues like you said, but also the 3-year picture play, man, and share. And then people will be like, huh, that's interesting. Maybe we could do that, or not. But
Yeah. I've never heard that before. Like, it was always interesting to me. Margaret Dixon out of Boulder, Colorado, she was our implementer. Yep. Yeah. She was our implementer at Hunt to Killer. And I mean, this, and maybe some of the audience know this, but in the 3-year picture, like, we would close our eyes and she would say it out loud, all the things that we envisioned. And then we'd say, can we get on that train? Is that where we want to go? It's like, hell yeah. I've never heard it called the Visionary Playground, but I can see that now. Like, you're building it
with the 1-year goals and the quarterly. I'm like, we need to do this quarter, and obviously we need everyone's buy-in who's actually going to do the work. The 3-year picture is like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a rooftop deck? And someone's like, well, that's stupid. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a rooftop deck? And then I would paint that picture to say, hey, you know what? It might cost $150,000, but we could and have happy hours there, and we could have meetings up there. And it's like, it's just a picture.
I've heard competing thoughts on this. What's your take on Visionaries having rocks and to-dos?
So this may or may not be true, but I'd like to take credit for what happens when a visionary takes a rock, because I sucked at it. So I was Gino's third client, and we struggled for many quarters. And then once Gino's like, you know what, Bob shouldn't have rocks. And I don't know if I was the first one, but I love it because so for me to be available to help everyone else to get their rocks done, so it's like, hey, Bob, here's what I've got so far, or what do you think? Or I'm stuck. I'm really good at helping people with that. I am not good with being held accountable. It's like, Bob, did you get this done? It's like, it's I personally, and again, I think, as a startup and until you have an integrator, so we got to do what we got to do. But I just am not great at the goals. I'm great at to-dos, which are the weekly goals. And then so again, even in my 331, I call it action items. Those are my daily goals. So I'm really good at daily goals and weekly goals, not so much with the quarterly goals.
So I agree with you. Everything you just said there, I agree with you. The hardest thing for me in that situation is to hold other people accountable and think that I'm above rocks. I'm above accountability. And that's the only thing that I struggled with, because that's how I wanted it.
Is it your job to hold everyone accountable as the visionary?
All right.
No.
That's that's a good point.
To me, I work for the visionary now, at least on a quarterly basis, and if we're going to go acquire a company or take on a $200,000 loan, obviously I need to be a part of that. And the integrator makes decisions to say, what's Bob going to think about it? Not that that's the decision you make, but he's going to come back and say, well, how's that going to affect the employee's compensation? Or how's that? Okay, fine. But I'm not the one holding people accountable. So stop it.
Yep. Okay. All right.
And that's the guilt thing, is that I don't have to have rocks and I get to go play. It's like, yeah, but so one of the things I used to, I lied to my, client or my team to say, I'm going to go out and prospect in Colorado, and I would go hiking. And my integrator is like, okay, it's okay if you go hiking, dude. I'm like, well, I feel bad. And they're like, you know what? We actually perform better when you're gone. And oh, by the way, you come back and say, hey, I had an idea for that problem we had. Or what I called a client from the mountain because I was elevated. I was at peace and said, Ryan, what if we tried this? So it was amazing to, when I leave, it's good because I'm letting go of the vine, but then I'm creative. And so now my team is like, go hike more often, How
about data on the scorecard? Do you think visionaries should be accountable in any of the data?
I don't think accountable, no, personally. I mean, now I've got a couple things like, it's not revenue, but it's like things that I like to do. So I guess we shouldn't be held accountable for anything we don't like to do. But if it's like one of the things, when I make 20 shout outs a week, and shout outs are, I have 2 90-minute sessions scheduled each week. And I basically go to the whiteboard and I'm like, all right, who comes to my mind? There's 10 people I'm going to shout out to. So it's not, hey, Ryan, are you going to go to the summit? It's, hey, Ryan, I was thinking of you. Just how are you doing? And about half of the people I call are like, that's funny, Bob. I was just thinking of you. And I'm like, well, that's why I called. But literally writing down 10 people, I may or may not get a hold of them, but I'll either leave them a voicemail or I'll send an audio. Just, hey, Ryan, I was thinking of you. I really appreciated this. And if I can help in any way. And it's amazing what happens when I do that. So like that is something that is worth, because then at the end of the week, it's like I only did 3 shout outs. It's like, but I like doing it. So as long as it's scheduled, so my assistant has to schedule it or I probably won't do it.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. I heard this summit. Someone was telling me last week. It's in New Orleans.
Correct.
Did I hear
Yep.
that right?
Yeah, the first week of February.
Okay.
It's going to be
Interesting.
effing awesome. That's our 9th one, dude.
I don't know if you know this or not, but my co-founder joined like last week or the week before.
Yeah, she's awesome.
So there it is. So we've got some representation. Maybe I can be her +1. Okay, cool. So not on the accountability or nothing in the accountability. Maybe tracking some things, but not ultimately accountable. What about L10s? Like, should Visionaries be in L10s?
I think it varies. I think yes, until a certain point. And if you have a great integrator, I don't think it's, and again, I'm not an implementer anymore, so I can say that, like Pure is okay that we are in them. But I think if it's a great integrator and a great team, I don't think we need to be in every one, as long as the integrator can speak on my behalf and make decisions. If it's let's do this, and then I hear about it, I'm like, that's stupid. We're not going to do that. Okay, well, then I should have been in that meeting. So if I can trust my team to make decisions, I don't think I need to be in there personally. But I think it's a timing thing. But it's, again, EOS to me doesn't work without a great integrator. I can't let go of the vine without a great integrator. It is such a huge thing. So even when I used to talk to people about does EOS make sense or not, my target market is big time visionaries ready for and committed to exponential growth, personally and professionally. So ready for and committed is like, okay, even if you're going to do EOS or come with me as a coach, as a coaching client of mine, it's like, are you ready for and committed? It's like, well, what does that mean? Well, do you have some time? Can you afford it? Are you going to show up? And it's like with EOS, it's like, do you have a potential integrator and or you might have to hire another person or two to get your leadership team killer within 2 years. So again, if a lot of people start with an EOS and yep, I'm going to let go of the vine. And if you don't have a good team, it's not going to work. And if you're not going to go to the L10 and you don't have a great integrator, it's not going to work. And yet with a great integrator, EOS is a game changer, man.
The reason I asked that question, I've heard varying takes on that. And the first time that I heard that, like, hey, visionaries don't have to be a part of L10s, I was like, God, that's a really interesting concept. And at Hunt to Killer, we were forced into that. So we had just raised about $12 million. It was December 21st of 2022. And a week after, so like the documents like weren't even dry yet. And a week after, the Navy calls me and they're like, hey, you've been tapped for a mobilization and you're shipping out for 10 months. Wow. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting because there's a lot of things that are happening right now, like in my life. Right. So I had to call all the investors back, and we wound up hiring an executive search firm, found an amazing integrator, and then we had no choice. Right. And so that's the mode we went into, where I was connecting with him sometimes on a daily basis, mostly on a weekly basis. We had during deployment, I had pretty good connectivity, but he was running the L10s, and like it worked, and that was really interesting to kind of see that play out.
Yeah, I just can't do end runs, if that's even the right application of that term. But if you're my integrator and you IDS an issue and you solve it, and then I come back and go, no, we're not going to do that. Okay, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And that's where before the L10 to know what the issues are. And again, the integrators say, hey, we're going to talk about firing Ryan today. And we're going to talk about that. And like, have at it. Or if you're going to do it, make sure we do this,
Yeah. And one of the things that really helped us out as well that we did is the issues couldn't just be the subject line of an email. So it couldn't just be like the thing that was in there. Like there actually had to be details, comments. Yep. So that everybody the day before could get a decent understanding of like what's coming down the pipe. And then we set a policy at a certain point. It got broken sometimes, but a policy at a certain point where like, if there were no comment, like at close of business the day before the L10, like those were the only issues up for processing, and you could add something, right, or maybe something didn't have a description, but like that was not going to be on the agenda for the next day.
Yep. Yeah. You got to be prepped for an L10 or obviously for a quarterly. So the numbers got to be in on time, the rocks, the goals, the issues. Yeah.
I read Wall Street Journal last week, and it was talking about this idea that like, there's this like new philosophy of co-CEOs. And right now it's really kind of in the tech world, but like, I think it's Spotify, but like there was like 4 companies over the last month that was like either the CEO stepping down or there's like going to be this co-CEO situation. Do you have any opinion on like co-visionaries?
I've never seen it work. My opinion would be I've seen it not work. And to me,
Oh,
if that's the case, then maybe you both go above the line into the owner's box or something. I mean, and again, I can't speak from experience on this. I just, especially, and if a team is rocking and rolling, I mean, maybe the accountability chart is the visionary reports to the integrator as a possibility, but I've never seen co-visionaries at work. I'm sure it has. And I've heard a few instances where it is, but I just, otherwise it's who's doing what. Now, if it's you're the visionary for tech and I'm the visionary for, I don't even know what it would be, but then then who does the integrator listen to?
yep.
So
Yep.
anyways, I wish I could speak more on that, but I've never seen it work.
When you talked about the idea of the owner's box, like what is the difference between the decisions, opinions, influence that the owner's box has versus the visionary inside of the company?
The way I understand and teach it is if you're in the owner's box, it doesn't mean you're on the leadership team or even have a seat in the company. And literally, we shouldn't affect anything in the 90-day world. And so I trust my visionary. I especially trust my integrator. And to me, it's the integrator's job to report to the owners either monthly or quarterly, just say, hey, here are the key numbers. Here are the rocks we have for the quarter. And obviously, if it's a huge purchase or a huge firing or whatever, okay, fine. But you're above the line. You trust the day to day. And so that is a big difference. Whereas I'm the visionary, I'm around enough and I can go right to the integrator. But yeah, and to be open and honest, I've never gone above the line and only been in the owner's box. But when I working with clients, it's a huge breakthrough when I've had even like 3 brothers that were kind of co-visionaries before they started. And at the end of the day, I got one to go in the owner's box, another one just to go down to technology, and it's like this person is the visionary. And so,
Yeah.
but you're in the owner's box. It's like you can't, we can have a monthly meeting and you can vent and whatnot to the integrator, but you cannot go to the team.
Right.
And to me, I like roles and responsibilities for the owners. So it's like, what is it? It's to respond when asked for your opinion, to follow up when needed on inspiration, for major purchases or whatever. But other than that, or it might be to make sure we have enough capital. That's your role, and if I'm going to make a decision, then it's like, okay, guys, can we help raise more money or whatever it might be. I like roles and responsibility and I actually had one client that at the end of a session, he said, can I bring in one of my potential board members? And I'm like, okay. And they came in and we talked about the role and responsibility for this guy who was going to invest. And I'm like, if you're investing, do you understand you cannot affect the day to day? And he ended up not coming on board. I'm like, dude, sorry about that. And he's like, no, they weren't a good fit because they would have meddled.
When you had the 3 brothers and ultimately the decision, like one went owner's box, one visionary, one into, I think you said, the technology seat. Like, are those tough conversations to have? Like, does everybody think they're the visionary?
They want to, but when they're open and honest, and that's where I think a third party is huge. I mean, my wife and we have a great relationship. We have several third parties, whether it be a astrologer or a psychologist or whatever, just someone who's not emotionally attached to say, Bob, you just interrupted her again, hello. And so I think it's not a tough conversation for me to have with them because I'm not emotionally involved. So it's a really hard conversation for those people on their own, especially if it's family. It's tough. But that's where, as an observer and as a coach, I can say, hey, do you guys trust me to say, Ryan, you do not want to be the visionary. Do you want to be in L10s every week? Do you want to have to deal with this? It's like you want to go off to Arizona and be retired. And you know what? More power to you. And dude, you're a technician. You're brilliant at that. But you know what? I didn't want you in the L10s. It's like, go do your thing. We need your genius. So it takes, and we do go through their Colby, their working genius. I coach with them. Again, I've had people who are like, how come I'm not on the leadership team for the CIO position? I'm like, you hate it. It's like, but that's where we need, it's an opportunity for us to have mirrors And I think I have a very hard time with my own company doing it, or even my own family, to be honest. But when I'm not emotionally attached, it's easy for me to share that and to be heard because I'm not emotionally attached.
It's so interesting the perspective you gain when like it's not yours. I was talking to somebody just about like simple marketing stuff. So this is probably a little cheesy compared to what we're talking about. But like we've been working on our 3 uniques now for like the last year, and every quarter we're changing them.
Right.
And like we just like we get a new data point. We're like, nope, that must be the one of the 3 uniques. And then I was talking to a guy last week, and he was like, "Hey, these are your 3 uniques." And I was like, "That's brilliant. Like, how'd you do that?" And he's like, "Well, I'm on the outside looking in, and also I'm a prospect, so I'm telling you exactly where I find the value."
Right.
It's so interesting the perspective that we can gain, like when we are not in it.
Yep. And that's the job of the visionary, is to not be in it. So then I'm much more aware of it without being in the day to day, you know?
That's super interesting. Yeah. Like if you're not in the day to day, then you see it just like you see anybody else's
Right.
company. There's the opportunity, go do it.
And
I'll be over here if you need me.
Yeah, most visionaries are really good at seeing gaps. So, you know, like I used to walk around my company when it was a distribution company. We had 135 employees, and twice a year I would walk around and talk to almost every employee, at least to a certain level. I'd be like, what do you do? Why do you do it? Is there a better way to do it? And then I would come back to the integrator and say, okay, this is screwed up, and they might want to try this, you know. And I told everyone, do not do anything differently because I thought it was good or whatever. Go to your boss, but, you know, speak your will. But I could see stuff. And again, I'd be like, we're going to screw up a mailing, you know, and they're like, no, it would have to be a perfect storm. And then 2 weeks later, well, 6 things had to go wrong for this to happen. I'm like, well, I told you, you know, so we actually are good at seeing gaps in process. In general, we're not good at managing a process.
Yep. Okay. We're same page. So usually I ask at this point something along the lines of like, you know, who's your ideal client? Like what geographic area do you focus on? Your situation is a little different and a little unique. And so do you just want to give us just a quick, what is TVF? Because I've been fascinated with it. I've joined a couple meetings. Obviously we are members of it. And so do you want to tell the audience what it is?
Yeah. So I'm a coach for visionaries, and that's what I lead with. That is, and my prospect is, my target market is, again, big time visionaries ready for and committed to exponential growth. So ready for is that you're only in the visionary seat or maybe one other seat. If you're in 5 seats and you don't have an integrator, and then you're running on an operating system, it doesn't have to be EOS, but you know, so many of my answers to your issues are going to be like, okay, well, you're setting rocks. Do you have a VTO? You know, so they got the basics done. So they have a little bit of time. They believe in spending money for a process and for coaching. So that's our target market for me, coaching people. And again, what a lot of people come to me, it's, okay, I'm trying to let go of the vine, but I don't know what to do next. And again, it's like, well, so who are you and what is life beyond the vine? So whether it be coaching or not, or then the community we have is the same people, you know, that are willing to, they're not the smartest one in the room, you know, that they want to help, you know, so it's to serve and to receive. So our 3 uniques are to belong, transform, and lead with purpose. And again, it's people that, you know, are ready for and committed that they will come to a meeting once or twice a month to learn and connect. They'll go to the summit and to learn and connect. So at the end of the day, it's someone who's running on an operating system, you know, again, 2 to 100 million, but the visionary is either in 1 or 2 seats. They want to learn and grow. A purpose-driven, I left that out of the target market, purpose-driven big-time visionaries. So, you know, I've got friends that are like killing it. And I'm like, I could help you with your whole life. And they're like, I'm kind of happy. You know, it's like, I don't need to solve the world's problems like you do, Bob. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. You know, so it's that a lot of them that have purpose. And again, we have people all throughout the country. So it's no one, because we are basically virtual. And so, yeah, so it's visionaries who, you know, that love to connect. We got locked down hard a few years ago when whatever happened that we got all afraid of. And so I had a meeting. I invited 18 visionaries and 17 showed up. And this is like 3 weeks after we're locked down. But it was like, okay, wow, we aren't going to just die by going outside. If I feel sick, I'm going to stay home, you know. But anyways, we had a great meeting. And one of the visionaries was like, this was great. And I'm like, well, why is that? He's like, not only am I good at connecting and like to connect, I have to connect. So it's
Yeah.
people that love to connect, and there's nothing greater than me introducing you to someone, and it's like, thanks, Bob. So long-winded, people who really want to go to the next level. And there are some people who say, well, and people come to the Visionary Forum, well, I want to be a better visionary. It's like, okay, cool. And then they go to Summit, and they're like, you're not talking about, even being a visionary. You're going here, aren't you? It's like, yeah. But then they're like, I'm a much improved husband. I'm a better leader because I know who I am, and I'm not seeking to get outside validation. I'm finding it from it. So that people are open-minded, as well.
I have so many follow-up questions that I won't take this down. I'll probably just ask you. Okay. I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that another time.
We'll do part two.
Yes. Okay. Last question, Coach Bob. So someone just listened to this whole thing. They are a flaming visionary, and they are seeking more purposeful life, joy, a coach. How would they get a hold of you?
Reach out to bob@imatter.com. So that's my email. So that's our company is iMatter. So again, what EOS is to business, iMatter is to life. So it's for anyone, but my target market is those purpose-driven visionaries. So email and say, hey, I saw you on Ryan's podcast, or I'm interested in more. And again, come check us out. And if you're interested, our rally cry is Viva la Visionary. So it's long live the visionary. And then kind of what sums it all up is it's iron sharpening iron. And it's basically visionaries unleashing visionaries, to brainstorm or deal with another visionary. And we're a mirror, and we'll tell it like it is. It's amazing. And we have a lot of fun.
Awesome. Sweet. Coach Bob, thank you so much and we went a minute over. So now I'm like super appreciative of your extra time, but appreciate you taking the time, coming on, sharing words of wisdom, your story, your journey. And most importantly, how you help visionaries and some tactics that visionaries can use, to get the process started before they call you. So that was awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure. Great hanging out, Ryan.